Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Path. It is Dara and Brian here with you today, and we are going to be talking more about Codex Chaos Space Marines, which has just previewed everywhere all over the internet in the last week or so. But today we are going to be diving into a very, very specific aspect of Chaos Space Marines, the Dread Talons Detachment. Now, myself and Brian both very excited about this book. If you haven't already seen our entire review of the book, you can catch it here on the Red Path. We dropped that one last week. But we are going to be talking about two detachments this week that we are particularly interested in running. Brian is high on the Dread Talons, and I'm super hype about the Chaos Cult detachment. Both of these detachments are kind of widely believed to be the worst detachments in the book. Internet kind of opinion has basically pushed these into meme tier. And we sort of disagree. We think that there's actually a lot of inherent power in both of these detachments. That's not to say that they are more powerful than things like the Raiders detachment or Alpha Legion or Veterans of the Long War. They're certainly not more powerful, but both myself and Brian are interested in kind of branching into Chaos Space Marines as a little side project from the World Leaders for both of us and trying to put a competitive spin on maybe the less noteworthy detachments. Now, there's going to be a ton of content creators talking about veterans, about pack bands, about Alpha Legion and all that stuff, the really popular ones. So we thought, wouldn't it be kind of fun if we pulled on some things which were less commonly spoken about, but were still very interesting to us? And today's video, we're going to be focusing on those Dread Talons and why Brian is now an honorary Night Lord. Brian, how are you doing today, and how excited are you about this?
I'm doing really good, Dara. I'm really excited. I'm actually working on building up the Night Lord's kill team pretty much as we speak and having like, I don't know, decision paralysis about what guns I should put on them and how scary I should make their axes and how much skin patches I should be putting on each of my guys. I'm really excited to kind of like take this. I've already taken the army out for a spin a couple times, just messing around with it on Tabletop Simulator. And it's fun. Like it's inherently just a really fun army and it is capable of doing some dirty, dirty things. And I think there's a few things that this detachment did a little bit better than the other morale-based attachments, and I'm really excited to kind of have it as a little side project, a little bit of play on the side for my world leaders for when I just want to go to an RTT and relax and just have a good time. I think this is going to be one of those armies I do it with.
Yeah, I think like that's the real, I suppose, main message here, that we're not like advocating for these being like top table armies. And when it comes to the real high end competitive stuff, we're mainly still playing world leaders. So anyone watching who's concerned that we're jumping ship from the world leaders, we're not. And anyone watching who's maybe like, are these guys crazy thinking that these are the best attachments? We're not saying that either. This is like a fun side project for both of us, but we're trying to find the competitive angle with both of these detachments. Specifically, Dread Talons here, obviously, it's very leadership focused. One of the things, like, Battle Shock is kind of like a meme to a lot of people where they don't, think it's very powerful. And I would say, generally speaking, the previous detachments that we've seen that revolve around Battle Shock, so you've got the Null Maidens and you've got that Tyranid one as well, they're maybe not that impactful on the board. But Night Lords kind of have maybe enough of a, we'll say, a critical mass where it actually does become relevant, and they have some really interesting synergies that key off of that. We're going to talk about that today. We might talk about your first experiences with Dread Talons, Brian, and maybe where the list is going, the list archetype that you're working on, and why it's kind of interesting how it all works together. But why don't we bring up the screen here for Dread Talons, and we're going to go through kind of how it works, and maybe as we're talking through these rules, we'll dive into some of those interesting synergies, which maybe you read one rule and it's not necessarily very clear as to how that could be powerful, but then you kind of see how it all comes together, and it actually does end up being quite interesting. So, kicking it off, the detachment. Why don't you focus in on the detachment rule here, Brian?
Yeah, so the detachment rule is battle shock focused, obviously. At the start of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit is below its starting strength and is within 12 inches of any of your models, they are forced to take a battle shock test. Now, you can set up really cool plays with this. They're also, anytime they take a battle shock test, they will be at -1. You can set up really cool plays with this. You can charge into a squad that you think's really easy to kill, toss grenades at another one that you don't plan on killing, but you know now that squad is going to pretty much be guaranteed to be forced to take a battle shock test. If they're near your raptors or something, they could be at -2. So you can actually like do a little bit of chip damage here and there in a few directions with grenades, maybe a cheeky tank shock to start forcing battle shocks around the board. Um, it's actually a little bit more relevant than you think. Because when you're at turn 3, 4, I've been in situations where, now in the few games that I've played, my opponents had 5 or 6 squads within range of my entire army, and now they're taking battle shocks at -1, -2 across the whole field, and they're failing 4 out of 6 of those battle shocks. So previously, I know people, like you mentioned, Dara, people used to think like battle shock's kind of a meme, which it currently is if you're playing like a standard game of 40K, because maybe you'll have 1 or 2 units below half strength that are in position to have it actually matter if they fail their battle shock, like something like Angron. If Angron fails his battle shock, usually don't really care because you're just going to launch him like a missile at something. He still has rerolls to hit. You really won't notice the pain on that. But once it's starting to affect everything and your berserkers and you're not +1 to wound and now you can't interrupt or -1 damage and it's your whole army that's like that, that's when things can get real scary real fast in the fight phase. And you can actually really mess with your opponent and kind of dictate the battle on your terms mid-fight phase. So, yes,
Yeah, I
it
think
is
it's really
morale based.
the
Yep.
fight phase that powers up, right? Because I mean, obviously, if they're battle shocked in their turn, that's going to last through the entire battle round. So when you decide to go in on them, obviously you're going to be very melee focused anyway, and they can't turn on their defensive strats. They can't use CP interrupt, all these kind of things like that. Obviously, you have a lot of interacting synergies as well. When things are battle shocked, you can use stratagems and bits and pieces like that. So it really kind of is like a setup army where when you see a turn where a couple of battle shocks go your way, you can jump in on them and really kind of capitalize on that. And with everything being -1 or -2, your standard leadership 6 Marine style armies, they're going to be up to leadership 7, failing half of their battle shocks. Your leadership 7 armies, so like Votan, Sisters, Tau, anything like that, they're going to be failing quite a lot of their checks. So it actually becomes like really quite interesting, especially when you can kind of get to, as I said, that critical mass with a variety of different abilities coming out of like Raptors and Firebrands and Demon Princes and things like that. I just think it's quite interesting that there is enough units that can actually trigger these checks at various
Mhm.
intervals of
And
the turn before you make that jump in, right?
yep, and I think I want to kind of like skew away here and like kind of run through like the most efficient ways to get battle shocks going on the table. One of the cool ones that I ran into, which is a way to battle shock your opponent on their turn, is when you eventually do decide to have your go turn with your Raptors. Raptors read at the start of the fight phase, everybody within engagement range of them has to take a battle shock test. You can you're going to think like, oh, that's like a last ditch effort to like battle shock on your turn. But that means when they charge you back on their turn, they have to battle shock test. And because you're a Raptor and they're -2 to their leadership, they're more likely to fail that than not. So when they're countercharging your Raptors, they have to take a battle shock test, which means when it goes over to your turn, their stuff's all battle shocked, and it opens up your play options more. You can unlock your AP, your reroll hit wounds. Like you can kind of like get a little bit more information on your opponent's turn in addition to when you would charge them with your Raptors on your turn. Um, so a couple other stellar models. A new model got a data sheet. Let's see, the Cultist Firebrand, which I think will be a core model in this detachment. I'm looking at running 3, depending on points. A couple in reserves, maybe one starting on the board. The key thing here is it has a D6+3 heavy flamer, which is nice for clearing chaff. It's a good unit too to just shove into the middle of the board if you need to do area denial or deploy teleport homers and you really don't want to commit. Like you don't really care if it dies. But the key thing is whenever this model has shot, select one infantry unit that's been hit, which you're guaranteed to hit. It's a flamer, and that unit must take a battle shock test on the spot. So in your shooting phase, you could have 3 of these little guys running around the board trying to get extra little battle shocks off, which is really cool. In your movement phase, you have your winged demon prince, which can fly over something to cause a battle shock. You have your raptors, which will cause a battle shock at the start of the fight phase. And you have your stratagem for the Screaming Descent, which is a 3-inch deep strike stratagem. And when you come down, you cause a battle shock upon coming down. You can do that really easily with just a lone squad of raptors dropping down. They can plant a flag, do deploy teleport homers, set up a screen, and battle shock all at the same time, or just come down with a couple up. They can have 2 melta guns per 5, just a couple extra melta shots. So you actually have quite a lot of ways to force battle shocks before any dice start actually getting rolled that matter. Like you can do it like 6 times on one squad, and when they got like a 60% chance to fail a battle shock, like it's gonna take 2, 3 of those like to guaranteed do it if it doesn't do it the first time, which you can set up those turns where it's like pretty guaranteed something's going to be battle shocked, which I feel like the other detachments kind of struggled with. Tyranids were always like, oh, you just happened to get battle shocked. Like, I'm going to do my thing now. Or Chaos Knights were like, oh, yeah, you just happened to get battle shocked, take a couple mortal wounds. This detachment, paired with the Codex and its data sheets, can definitely lean into that redundancy to kind of reliably set up those situations. So, while yes, battle shock is still kind of weak and still kind of a meme, it's suddenly less of a meme when your entire opponent's army is battle shocked. And I have been in multiple situations now where that has been the case.
Yeah, I don't think it's like honestly that difficult to make this happen, if that makes sense. Like I know it seems like there's a lot of hoops being jumped through here, but it's kind of just the army functioning as it wants to function while still actually doing the mission at the same time. I mean, there's other things, like the one that really comes to mind for me is if you have a situation where we'll say someone's running a lot of transports or things inside transports or land raiders or whatever. I mean, like if you shoot those and blow them up in your turn, the unit that gets out is automatically battle shocked, so all of your abilities will immediately start working on them. It's things like that, it's quite scary actually when it goes from being like, okay, cool, I'm making the vast majority of my battle shock checks on average, to I'm actually failing the majority of my battle shock checks on average, especially, like a host of armies which don't have that LD6 on their data sheets, which is quite a lot of armies in the meta right now, to be honest. It starts to become really interesting, I think. And that's before we even really touch on the abilities that your army has that key off of battle shock, right? Which is where the actual power comes into this army.
Yeah. And then I can kind of talk about some of my game experiences and kind of like some of those like scenarios that you could find yourself in,
Yeah.
which I'm still like, I actually discovered a good use for Bloody Example, which people were widely saying was one of the lesser stratagems, which it probably is, but even it in itself is very useful. So I guess we can just start at the top of the stratagems real quick.
Let's do that.
Uh,
Yeah.
Depthless Cruelty. When something's battle shocked or below half strength, you can improve your armor penetration characteristic of a melee attack by 1. This is a battle tactic, so you can spam it across multiple squads. In my list, I had a couple like little death bricks running around, and it's just a solid one. You don't need this. Like Legionaries already hit pretty hard. But pushing Power Fists up to AP3,
It's
it's
not
real
nothing.
good.
Yeah.
It's real good.
I think this does. We were talking before the video about the kind of knights as being a stat check for this army. Um, I mean, that pushes your chainswords up as well, right? On those legionnaire squads, if
Yeah,
they are
you
battle shocked, obviously.
yep.
That's not
And
bad, really.
no, and Legionnaires get full rerolls to wounds, so like you can actually punch up quite well. In Depthless Cruelty, yes, you do have to jump through a hoop to get something to use it on something that's battle shocked. But again, like if you need something battle shocked, you are going to have multiple and repetitive instances to attempt to get them battle shocked that will somewhat reliably do it. So like if you need to be AP1 into a giant brick of Terminators, they're not going to get to Armor of Contempt, and you will be AP1 if you set your turn up right for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
yeah, that's good. That's
there's
real
some
good,
good there's
actually.
some good synergies here.
I liked your
Um,
your funny words. That is quite funny, actually. Yeah, because I just didn't even really consider. Even though I said it, I was like, no defensive strats, no AOC, no -1 damages, no anything like that.
None of that
Okay,
annoying
cool.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Bloody
yeah.
example. In a turn I was just in, my opponent drew Capture Enemy Outpost, and he got Thunderwolf Cavalry around the edge of the board and got him onto my outpost, and completely murdered the squad of cultists there, and he was really, really happy. Um, and he thought he was about to score capture enemy outpost. Now, in the current setting of the game, you don't gain control of an objective until the end of a turn or end of a phase. So he technically didn't own the objective yet, and I still had it sticky too. Um, I ended up pairing this with a separate stratagem, Merciless Pursuit. He tried to run away with a lord on foot, just a lone lord on foot that had survived, and I actually ran him down with a squad of legionaries who happened to be within 12 inches and visible of that Thunderwolf cavalry that took my home objective. I ended up just murdering the character after running him down, and then even though that fight had resolved on the other side of the board, or like 12 inches away, I decapitated the Lord and like hung his skin up in the air and scared the Thunderwolf cavalry, and he actually did not end up capturing enemy outpost, and the objective stayed sticky for me, and I scored 5 points on it. So swung it 13 points just by,
That's a huge swing. Yeah.
which is a huge swing, and like
Yeah.
it's niche. It was nice to do it. It was really cool. I was like, aha, like this is definitely not something I thought of, but like he
But
was
I
really
feel like this
happy.
army is built off that, right? Like that interaction that you just said there. It's about seeing the ability to make plays like that because of all these like niche case kind of stratagems and abilities and stuff, and being able to implement those correctly on the table to leverage them to gain victory points, right? It's
Right.
not. It's definitely not a simple detachment to play because I'm sure the majority of people wouldn't have seen that play as, if I do Merciless Pursuit now and chase down this Lord, that will happen within 12 inches of this squad, and then that will be a 13 victory point swing for grand total of 2 CP. It's very hard to have that vision, and I think this army relies on the general being able to have that kind of like planning, almost like foresight, or not even necessarily foresight, but being able to read a board state in a very precise and analytical sense and say like, okay, what can I apply here, and how can that gain me an advantage, and that's a really good example of it, I think.
Yeah, and this army won't just straight up win you the game in one engagement. You aren't just going to walk into the middle of the board, charge three things, and table your opponent. You will play a 5-turn game and you will play a bloody game of attrition and be as annoying as possible and try to disrupt your opponent's scoring as much as possible, which I really enjoy. That contrasts very differently from World Leaders right now. And it's you got to like kind of be big brain mode the whole time, thinking about how you can chip away and get as much value as you can from your opponent. Which bloody example in that situation actually did for me. The next cool little synergy we have going on that I want to talk about, Pitiless Hunters. You get to give full hit and wound rerolls to a Heretic Astartes infantry unit as long as it is targeting something that is battle shocked or below half strength. The below half strength is nice. That means later in the game, if something's across the board that's like barely alive and isn't battle shocked, you can still get value. Like you don't have to worry about it. But like I said earlier, with the redundancy of the Demon Prince flying over something, with you deep striking in 3 inches away, or just shooting them with 2 firebrands, it's like 4 instances of battle shock you can do before you even consider popping the stratagem. If they're not already battle shocked from their own turn from charging raptors, like there's like 5, 6 instances where this hoop that you see has actually already been like feasibly set up. And if you set up for it, it's really not that big of a task to accomplish. Now you can give a squad of Havocs coming in from strat reserves off the side of the board. Currently, I'm playing with a squad of Reaper chain cannons on the side of the board, strat reserves walking on, and then usually I have like a little firebrand in reserves as well that comes with them to try to battle shock something coming onto the board and just light something up with 32 Reaper chain cannon shots. Great way to pick up a squad of 20 boys. I think
I feel like the Reaper squad is the choice for that stratagem, right? It's either them or Obliterators.
it's them or obliterators, and both are situational. I have currently Dara and I were talking. I think I'm actually going to put a squad of obliterators, just a 2-man squad, and a squad of Reaper chain cannons. I think that's really like all the shooting I kind of want. Um, and that's enough to threaten, like, and be versatile with this as well. Like if there's a bunch of marine bodies, the obliterators probably want to use the stratagem with the 2 damage profile. Or if there's something like a horde coming at me, 32 shots, full hit wound rerolls with sustained hits, we'll pick a horde up. And for 120 points and 1 CP, that's pretty good. You can then use this with your Lord. If you use you say a vehicle comes up to you, you want to be versatile, your obliterators can light it up, pay 1 CP. Full hit wound reroll. If you don't kill it, you can have your Lord attached to 10 Raptors. That's 4 Melta guns. Pop the strat for free because that's a battle tactic. You have 4 Melta shots plus 2 plasma pistols, full hit wound reroll. You can actually fairly consistently pop medium to large vehicles just between the 2 obliterators and the 4 Melta guns. It's really cool. I like it.
And it's
Conversely,
battle
like
tactic, which
it is battle tactic,
is nice. Yeah.
and you can drop down somewhere on the other side of the board. Say you drop 3 inches away from an objective, and you want to weaken the squad up with shooting. And say your Havoc's already picked up whatever they were shooting at. You can have your Lord on the other side of the board, drop down 3 inches away on top of an objective, injure the squad that's on the objective with you, so that they then have to take another battle shock on their turn. So like that's actually not
It's not nothing. Yeah.
it's not nothing, and it's probably one of the stronger stratagems in here. Relentless Terror, fall back and charge, fantastic.
I mean, that's super useful in this detachment, right?
It is. Well, wombo combos, that Relentless Terror and Merciless Pursuit. I am playing. Let's see if I can find him. Harkin World Claimer in this list. He's now an honorary Night Lord. He's really good because on impact, for every guy that you have in base combat or contact on a fort, you deal 1 mortal wound. You pair that with fallback and charge. You can just re-spam mortal wounds. If you're having difficulty picking up like a vehicle or something, you will get it eventually if you dump enough mortal wounds on it. Pair that with Merciless Pursuit if they try to run away from the squad. And which is actually a really good point, is Merciless Pursuit is not when they run away from your squad. It's if they end within 6 inches of a unit. That unit can then charge. So if they're running away
I didn't realize
and they're caught in the middle of your army, like they have to kind of play like, who do I like that was like they're like in my game, the dude's like, yeah, my Thunderwolf cavalry moved 10 inches. I can definitely just get away from you and you're not going to be able to attempt this charge. And I'm like, yeah, good luck dodging the rest of the army though, because like you're stuck in the middle of all of it. And I Merciless Pursuited with a squad of Raptors nearby. And the Power Fist ended up picking up that
It's also a really
cav.
funny way of like bodyguarding a squad that might be in danger. If they move within 6 of them, you know?
They have to fall back.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. But I mean, if they fall back within a squad that, like within range of a squad that is lined up to be shot to crap, that you can just be like, cool, I'll just tag in here.
Bye. Like,
Yeah.
yep. So that's really good. Same thing with your Raptors. When you have them attached to your Chaos Lord, jump pack has a cool ability that gives them a 6-inch consolidate. Say you charge and just blow something up, 6-inch consolidate into a squad of guardsmen now, who just won't do anything for melee. They're going to run away exactly 6 inches away from you, so you get to pop the strat, recharge them, and now you're back in base contact with guardsmen, and your squad is basically safe from all guard shooting for that turn. So you can get like really big brain with this, similar to how we use our Exalted 8-bound with leadership trapping people. Just pay a CP, and instead it's guaranteed. Like, it's actually quite good.
For me, there's no bad stratagems here.
Bloody Example will probably be the most niche one, but
I don't think it's bad.
When you use it, it will be backbreaking.
Yeah.
Like you could like just paying 1 CP gives you like a 60% chance to stop somebody from using Armor of Contempt or Interrupt or -1 damage or Fight on Death on a squad next to you. Like that is real good. Real good.
Well, I mean, even it's just like because it's everyone around that squad, right? So you can really spread like out a sudden like bomb of battle shock checks.
Yeah, it can be huge.
Yeah.
And that one will be more niche. Probably your least used one here, but it will have its use, and when it does go off, it will be strong. Which you're probably going to be using your Pitiless Hunters and your Deathless Cruelty and your Screaming Descent the most. Usually your opponent's going to start playing around Merciless Pursuit. Like you're just going to put them between a rock and a hard place, and usually they're just going to choose the hard place and never give you a chance to pursuit, which is a good place to be. Like you want to be there.
Especially when you have Relentless Terror because even if you don't slam them in your turn, you can just leave and charge again in the next turn.
Yeah, it's like nice
And
blast gun. Like, what are you gonna
yeah,
do? Like,
it's also
you're
just
not gonna
like
shoot it.
that squad who has now been in combat for 2 turns with like raptors or talons or something, um, is now almost certainly below half strength, so you can use depthless cruelty and just get the extra AP. I don't know. There's like every time I look at this and I hear you talk about it, I actually love listening to you talk about it because I'm like, there's so many weird synergies that are just
Like,
like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that.
it, and and I'm still learning it too. Like, in my games that I've been playing, like I've been forgetting stuff, but afterwards I've been like, oh wait, like if I just one, two, three this differently, then the situation, and that this will be a very punishing, I feel like very punishing army to play. It's going to be little bit more challenging. If you just want a little bit of a challenge and you just want to have a nice, fun, unique, like I think this detachment actually makes Battleshock work for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I still think the core rules around Battleshock are weak, but what it unlocks for the army is actually quite insane.
So I suppose based on all that, why don't you give us the list that you're playing with at the minute and kind of run us through. I know it's very hard to actually talk about a play pattern for a list that's in this detachment, but maybe run us through the ideas, why you picked the units that you've picked, and kind of how it all comes together on the table.
Sure. First, I'm gonna walk through a couple of the data sheets that I'm just playing, and then I can take you through the main list. First, I kind of talked about Harken World Claimer. Like I said, he offers you just a little bit more mortal wounds on impact, which is really good because I will say that my army does lack a lot of high strength, high AP, high damage attacks that outside of shooting. So being able to just dump mortal wounds on something, really good. He has precision built in, and he has a quite good one shot like melee lance. Like, and if you do spike it, it's quite nice. He does have another ability, kind of. It's just a worse version of the detachment rule, so it's kind of a non-bow, but the amount of mortal wounds he brings to the squad and his melee profile by itself, it's worth trying right now. We have our Chaos Lord. I'd be playing him with a plasma pistol and a power fist all day. Just being strength 8, AP 2, 2 damage, potentially AP 3, 2 damage. He's going to pick up 4 Marines every time he charges a squad, which is real nice. And I do play one Lord by himself. So, like, having just a casual Lord floating around that could just go clean up a squad of scouts is really helpful.
And the key thing about that Lord is utilizing the 3-inch deep strike a lot of the time, right? Just
Correct.
micro Calidus assassin.
He's my Calidus assassin going up and down to go do secondaries, but that turn where I need that 3-inch deep strike to like get an extra jump scare in, he is a utility piece that can do that. You can also do it with I run a lone squad of raptors, which can also do it, which I can talk about some synergies with that once we get there.
Yeah, sure.
Cultist Firebrand. Um, I'm still waiting. We're still out for points right now. I'm not aware of what GW has priced this model at. Um,
We think he's going to be around 30 or 40 points, though.
yes, and anything more than that, I think would be a little unfair. It's really just a heavy flamer on a stick. Um, and the only real nice, like honestly, the two detachments that this unit is best in is actually the two detachments that Dara and I are playing.
Yeah, for sure.
You can give him a quick shout out. He gives your leading while he's leading a cultist unit, he can give that cultist unit rerolls to their leadership tests, which for the cultist attachment, they're taking a lot of leadership tests all
Gives
the
the
time,
the cultist LD6 as well, which is a big one.
and bad things happen if you fail those checks.
Yeah,
Um, but the part I'm more interested in, again, is Battle Shock on a stick. It's really good. If it's going to be like a 30, 40 point model, it's an action monkey you don't care about. Throw it in the middle of the board. Go get area denial. Whatever. If he dies, he dies. He also just helps make you a little bit more consistent.
yeah.
Next, we have the Raptors datasheet. Just wanted to mention again, like you get an extra -1 leadership within 6 inches, pushes your Marines to needing an 8 on the dice roll. It really does make it more consistent. Again, it's at the start of the fight phase, so both fight phases for both players. You force your battle shock check. For the Harken squad, I can get into that when I get into the list, but these guys can take 2 Meltas per 5, which is pretty good. One 5-man can do the 3-inch deep strike down and actually build like a screen on your opponent. Like you can movement block your opponent real easy. These guys are dirt cheap right now at 80 points. We don't currently know what their points are, but I'd guess they stay roughly the same. Then finally, we have Warp Talons. This data sheet's just cracked. I think it should be in most CSM lists.
We were saying this is
Um,
probably the best data sheet in the entire CSM book.
yep.
Yeah.
Uh, not only do you get to have synergies with like if you need to, your 3-inch deep strike come down scare, like this is kind of like a last resort piece, but very often this unit is going to be in reserves for you. Warp Strike, after this unit was eligible to fight and is no longer in engagement range, it can pick itself up. I love this piece, specifically for Night Lords too. A, because it's a jump pack unit, so it can use a lot of our synergies. And B, because like we can give it +1 AP, which is real nice. Pushing Warp Talons to Lightning Claws to AP3 is real scary. That can get obscene real quick because you get 20 attacks per 5. These guys are really good at charging chaff, killing it, and then disappearing. And your opponent doesn't get to play the trading game with you. Like they just win the trading game on the spot.
I mean, with the right strats, though, AP3, twin linked, sustained, or lethal if it's a heavy target, the volume coming out of these guys is not just killing chaff, right? Like, these guys are mincing big targets, I think.
Yeah, and you're going to see like early game, like in almost all of my games, I've been turn one charging my opponents with Warp Talons and then being like, bye.
See
And
ya.
then they'll
Yeah.
come back later for a rapid ingress to go steal the home objective from your opponent, or that 3-inch jump down jump scare to steal and again flip an objective in your control. Like Warp Talons are real good and they synergize really well with the rest of our army. So the list that I am currently running, that Dara and I have been talking about. I have a solo Jump Lord with the Uppy Downy stratagem, or the Uppy Downy enhancement. I have another Jump Lord, and I am using old points for this. It's worth mentioning. I'm assuming all of the enhancements are 20 points just as a blanket. I actually think that's probably going to be overcosting it. But that's just what I'm benchmarking it at. My list will be ±1 squad of cultists. So we have Uppy Downy Jump Lord. We have a regular Jump Lord with no enhancements. We have a Winged Demon Prince of Khorne to push much strength then. You kind of really need that to cross that threshold. And I'm giving him the CP generation enhancement just to get a little bit more CP roll, and this will be a very CP heavy detachment. Currently, I'm stuck between a Master of Executions or a Dark Apostle for this role. They will be attached to 10 Legionaries, just to kind of be like a bully brick in the middle, just come as a wave 2 and help kind of lock down the middle of the board. Next, we have Harkin to go with the Squad of Raptors for just mortal wound access. It's worth noting that the Demon Prince before that we mentioned also dumps mortal wounds on the charge. You get on a 4-up, you get a d6 per wound it has remaining. So like on your go turn, you could dump 10 mortal wounds on a target. Like that will pick up an Avatar of Cain just real quick. I bursted down an Angron in my face the other day. I threw it in my face and I was like, okay, just take a couple mortal wounds and here's one last cannon shot and he's gone. Um, 2 squads of 10 cultists, 1 squad of 10 legionaries in a rhino. I have 1 squad of havocs with a Reaper chain cannon, usually going to walk off the side of the board. I have 1 squad of 2 obliterators that are just going to be hiding in the background. I have 1 squad of 5 raptors, which their use is going to be more of a utility piece in my mind. Like I'm going to want them to be 3-inch deep striking more often than not, or like maybe doing side objectives. They do have 2 melta-guns, so when they do 3-inch deep strike, they can get a little bit of value. I have 2x10 raptors. One is going to be mostly a melee loadout, and that one will be attaching to Harkin. That one I can see myself putting in reserves at the start of the game to just be a early rapid ingress threat to just go blow something up. I have a second squad of 10 raptors. This one will have 4 melta-guns. It will be with the regular Jump Lord without the Uppy Downy enhancement. That's 4 melta-gun shots, and that's a battle tactic. So, like I said earlier, you shoot your obliterators, shoot your havocs. Now you can just shoot 4 melta-guns, full hit wound rerolls into a vehicle. You're probably popping that vehicle. And then finally, 3x5 warp talons. And plus 2 to 3 cultist firebrands on the side, still out waiting for points, but there will be a number of them in the list. So that is currently what is working in my head right now. Probably stuff going to be moving around. But the list has been really fun to play, really rewarding to play, and really refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so different from what we're used to playing with the World Leaders. It's like almost a polar opposite of like, it's not a hammer, it's a scalpel, except it's like a lot of scalpels falling from the sky and then jumping back into the sky. I personally think that you will improve as a player playing this because you have to be so on your game. It will improve like your focus at the table, I think, which is really really cool. I also just think people will have a really hard time playing against this because number one, they won't think you're playing a serious game when you show up with Dread Talons. You know, they're going to be like, oh, the fun fluff guy who wanted to run out all the jump pack guys, and then you start doing stuff to them, and they start realizing probably a bit too late the majority of the time that they underestimated the army and you as a player. Obviously, that has a limited amount of like success because once you get to the high tables, people will respect what you're bringing no matter what. But I just think people won't understand how to play around this. It's very hard to actually play against this attachment correctly unless you have a very innate understanding of what it does. Because like some of the synergies that you've pointed out there, you as the opponent is definitely not going to see this until they actually happen to you, and then you might be like anticipating that, but then you don't see another scenario that's going to come up later. Like it's very very difficult to play around, you know, constant 3-inch deep strikes, constant 3-inch rapid ingresses, constant like guys chasing you down when you fall back, falling back and charging on your side of the thing. Suddenly things that aren't supposed to be as lethal as they are suddenly getting more AP or like, you know, different buffs. All the while half of your army or more is constantly battle shocked, meaning you can't hold points and your primary is suffering as a result. Like it's a real stressful army to play against, I feel.
Yeah, and I think Jamie and a couple other people in the Discord that I've played this against would probably agree. People that say Battle Shock is not, it's a meme because it's not consistent. Jamie failed his first 7 against me. Um, and it's not because he got unlucky. He was rolling 6s and 7s that would normally pass a Battle Shock, but because he was -1 and -2 in those situations, and because of how dice statistics work, it's a bell curve. And 7 is right at the tip of that bell curve. And as soon as you cross that bell curve, it drops
Hard.
drastically.
Yeah.
Like needing an 8 and needing a 9 on the dice is like you're talking 20-30% chance
The way
that
that
you
I
roll
would
that.
say to the world leader players who are watching, don't stop thinking of it as a leadership check or a battle shock check. Think about these as charges that you've got to make, right? You know, how are you feeling about a lot of 6-inch charges? You're probably feeling okay. How are you feeling about like tons of 8-inch charges? Probably less okay, you know? And that's
Yep.
kind of where I'm like, this is where like that's how I kind of visualized it in my single brain cell skull cavity, and I was kind of like, oh wow, actually, you know what, I gotta respect the hell out of this. Not that I don't respect the other detachments, of course I do, but people out there saying like haha funny meme, I think they're very wrong. And I think a player who knows what they're doing and rocks up with this, I mean, I could see you winning a GT with this.
I think that would be like I'd have to like game 5. First of all, this army melted my brain just playing it for an hour. Like I spent like 30 minutes on my first or second movement phase because it's much like Thousand Suns where you have to set up like everything has to be in place for you to get the payoff. And if you mess up anywhere in between, you don't get that payoff. So like it can be really draining on your brain. But yeah, I think if you take people by surprise, you can really mess them up. And I think there are a lot of meta armies that this list would actually excel into. Blood Angels, I will just shut down completely. A lot of the synergies that Blood Angels has going for them that makes them a really strong combat army. They will not be interrupting. They will not be armor of contempting. They will not be fight undeathing. None of that. None of that's happening here. Thousand Suns. You don't generate Cabal points if you are battle shocked. Just really funny to do. And that army
I mean, that's
really needs
hilarious.
they
Like,
really need their Cabal points. And you
yeah,
mess with that number just a little bit, you make Magnus generate no Cabal points for a turn, and now they're going from casting 3-4 spells to like 2.
for the poor Thousand Suns players already having a very hard time setting up their turn when they suddenly fail half their battle shock tests and have to deal with that. That's a chess clock moment, if ever I've seen it, where it's just like, what are you going to do now, bro?
And I feel like the Night Lord player playing the Thousand Suns players, literally, we're both playing 5D chess, I feel
Yeah.
like.
That's like the. I think I would pay very, very good money to see you on Night Lords with enough practice and a high level Thousand Suns player duke it out on stream. I'd pay good money to watch that, just and to have like player mics, right? Because that would be messed up.
Oh yeah, and like I'm gonna have a lot of fun hobbying this. And this army is mainly gonna be a hobby project for me. I'm currently listening to the Night Lord trilogy books that a couple of the guys on the Discord server hooked me up on. Um, I'm gonna be listening to that while I paint. I'm really excited. I love the aesthetic. I love kind of like the dynamic around them, and their models look really cool. And I'm gonna have a lot of puns all over my army too. It's gonna be a good time, and I'm really hoping I can make this army work in Excel. And I want to get to the point where I'm comfortable bringing it to a GT. Currently, probably not. This army is hard to play, but I'm really excited to learn it.
Yeah, but give it a month, right? Give it a few weeks of practice games, and you'll get there. Well, I'm really excited for it as well. Like, I just think it's a I think we've both found something in this CSM book that has kind of like sparked almost equal interest in us, where we're kind of like, and I feel like we're both the same, where we're like, look at this trash. What if I make it my trash? And that's the road that we're going on. So I guess if you're a regular fan of the Red Path, maybe expect to see a little bit more Dread Talon content from Brian, and maybe some cultist detachment stuff from me. I will do a video on the cultist detachment later on this week. Myself and Brian might sit down to discuss that one. So have a look out for that if you are interested in seeing what the mortal hordes of chaos, the lost and the damned, can do on the tabletop. And I don't know, maybe we'll put together some like hobby update videos as we progress through this as well, because I feel like we're going to be building some pretty interesting armies. Both of us have a lot of ambitious conversions and plans for this. So why not let us know down below if you want to see like regular updates on how we're doing with these armies. And if you do, I mean, we can maybe do like a monthly check-in, break up the world leader content every now and then and say like, hey, end of the month, how are we feeling with our two armies after maybe getting some games in, or hobbying up some cool stuff, and yeah, we'll show that up. I think that sounds like a fun idea, but let us know if that sounds fun for you guys to watch. But yeah, Brian, is there anything you want to say to close this one out?
I'm just gonna again reiterate, guys, that like try to have fun with this book. This book has a lot of really cool things going on in it. Um, don't be discouraged. Give everything a shot. Just try to have a blast because I actually do think the Chaos Space Marine book is probably one of the more well-written ones from just like playability. Like it is playable. All of the detachments do feel playable. There are some key winners here, but like have fun with it, guys.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, I think for now though, that will be everything from myself and Brian here. Thank you everyone for watching this video. If you've gotten this far, all of our support links are down below in the description. If you want to hit us up on Patreon and keep the channel going, that is great. Or just drop us a like, comment, and subscribe down below. You know how it is on YouTube. Or hop into our Discord, where myself and Brian now have our own little mini channels where we're kind of almost exclusively talking about these like whack ideas that we're going through. But yeah, thanks so much, folks. This has been a really fun video to record. I'm wondering, do we do a different outro where it's like stay healthy, stay safe, and like skin, flay? What's the last one? I don't know.
Skin play, skin some more.
All
Skin
right,
play scare. There you go.
there we go. Until the next one, folks, stay healthy, stay safe, and skin, flay, scare?
Battle shock.
Battle shock, baby! Oh dear.